Good afternoon, our viewers. We want to thank you for joining us yet again. Today we sit to have a pertinent conversation on issues that are happening now. Critically for us as a team, we want to look at, the budgeting process as it happens. We know committees have begun to sit. The numbers have begun to roll out. We are speaking 44 trillion as a country for our national budget. But we want to sit down and then have a conversation on what does that mean for us as women, as, leaders, and reimagine it for ourselves as a community. And today to have this conversation with me, I have an amazing woman, a lady we look up to. A lot of us women look up to her and her tenacity in the whole political space. Honorable Winnie Kiiza, who was a former LOP of our opposition, and now she's at ANT. So welcome to this panel today. I am glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
And a seasoned lawyer. You're seasoned now. I need you to be seasoned. But also an activist in her right, and not very new to these conversations here on the Women's Show. Kirabo Marion, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I love this dynamic because it's a person giving us insight from I have been there, I have seen it, and from the eyes of a young person that is saying, here I am, use me.
Here I come.
Yes, here I come.
And one thing I just love about this conversation is it is now bringing all the age groups into perspective.
Yes.
Marion is looking to a future that is bright, a future where she thinks everybody should now be focusing on issues really that affect her and that are affecting her generation.
Exactly.
And then those of us who are supposed to provide this future are here.
Yes.
Those of us who are supposed to look at that generation are here.
And you're telling her, look here, don't look there.
Yes, and I love even the conversation, the fact that we are coming here to speak about the budget. The budget is affecting the biggest population of Uganda, which is for the young people.
Exactly.
So it's really very, very wonderful to be part of this show. And I want to ask all citizens of Uganda and all those who are viewing to take keen interest in listening to the budget conversation. The issues are happening in Uganda and what is around the globe. Thank you.
And maybe to kickstart this conversation for us, let me bring in Marion. Then you bring in the higher insights. Marion, what do you think about our 44 trillion budget as it is imagined right now?
Well, so it has been reduced. So from 45, they're now suggesting 44. They are saying perhaps they might have to lower their target considering the shortfalls that they had in the last financial year. I don't particularly see, maybe I'm being a pessimist or something, but I don't particularly see any impact or any change in how it's going to be distributed. Of course, already even in the budget framework, you see that it's almost a semblance of the same. You would think because of the pandemic, certain things would have changed.
Exactly.
But it's still the same. We will see majority of the money going to security. That is also there. We did expect that. A great amount is health and agriculture are still receiving 1.8. Around there or less. If they have helped you, they increase it to 2 trillion. You see that a lot of the money is going into debt financing, about 7.6 trillion. Yes. So it's really, there is money going out rather than in. There is no money that is coming in to create, how can I say, to revamp the economy and to create an economy that can make profit of the budget, I would say.
And that works for us.
Yeah, and works for us. I find what is very problematic is the discussions around delayed salary for especially civil servants, that because they don't have, they might experience shortfalls, so they want to delay salary of most of their workers and not pay some in the I think that's very unfair. I mean, we had a contract and we had a deal that why don't you get money off these classified and supplementary budgets and pay me? I don't know how that is going to help. Besides, how do you expect these civil servants to live if you're not paying them? I think that's going to be a very problematic and very touchy subject. I've heard them talk about it. I do not agree with it at all. But also the other thing is that, yeah, the government can make arguments that, you know, they are going to invest in the myogas and that will be their way of revamping the economy and creating job opportunities. But if wealth creation is to go by, if the several engagements that they have done around that since 2021, we have seen how there's, first of all, it's very problematic distributing this money.
Exactly.
And secondly, who are you distributing it to? How are you, so what are the performance indicators? How are you making sure that the people who actually borrow money are going to, are actually using it for that? Because most of the time it's even hard to get these loans back. So you're taking money out of government, but you're not really bringing it in as you should. There's no way to coerce these people to give you back that money.
And maybe let me call in Honorable Winnie there, because you know the argument is, how about the informal sector or the care sector? How are we going to, you know, add them to this conversation? And while they will front the myoga, the, you know, PDA, that PDM, and so you have parish development model. Before that, we had all these initiatives that have come and gone, less accountability for what the money has done. How do we reimagine, or how do we focus our lens on the money that has been given and the ability for it to, you know, pull us out of our agencies and help us, you know, empower the informal sector enough for it to be added to the tax regime?
You know, just possibly for purposes of recapping what we dealt with last week, in respect of the budget cycle, our viewers should know that budgeting is not a one-day's event.
Exactly.
It's a process. And this process, year in, year out, it happens. The cycle begins in July, after the reading of the budget in June. So the planning for this next financial year begins in July. By September, the consultative conferences are supposed to have happened to engage all citizens, to ensure that everybody is brought on board. By December, that's when the budget framework paper is coming to Parliament. And I think by April, the minister is supposed to be now reading the budget in Parliament for the final input after the members have discussed it at committee level, for the final input for purposes of passing it by 31st of May. So many people get interested in the budget. I'll repeat this. Many people get interested in the budget on the day of the budget speech.
True.
That is when they start discussing the budget. But by the time you are starting now to discuss the budget, after the budget speech, you are just doing postmortem.
Exactly.
The bigger part of the work is already, actually the whole part of the work is already done.
From September.
From as far as July. As far as July. The budget process is catered for under Article 152 to around 159, Chapter 9 of the Constitution. This provides a legal framework, and subsequently it brings in now the Budget Act, which gives the processes and the procedures. Article 190 to 197 also now empowers the local government to come up at their levels with the planning processes. And at that point, all these people at the grassroots, LOC 1, LOC 2, LOC 3, LOC 5 are supposed to be involved into the budget. formulating of their development plans, and this budget must be in harmony with the national development plan. Now, coming back to the question that you asked, how is this budget going to help the citizens of Uganda, and most especially ensuring that the money goes to the
designated people?
People. Now, the budget, the theme, speaks volumes about empowering the common person to have money. And if you put money in the hands of the common person, then you will be revamping the economy. The money that is supposed to revamp the economy, like you said, to increase the household incomes, is the parish development model. But I was looking at the budget framework papers presented to Parliament. I saw that even the money that is supposed to go to the parish development
is
less by close to 400 billion, 400 plus billion, coming to around 500 billion. Meaning that even what is supposed to reach the common person is not enough. Much of the money in the budget goes to infrastructure development, and most especially roads. Yes, we really love the roads, but who is doing the contracts? Much of the money is going out. We are draining our economy. We are giving more of the contracts to the Chinese, to the Portuguese, to people from Turkey, to Israelites, and little of this money goes into the Ugandan common person's pocket.
And so you have money sweeping out of the country. So you have
money sweeping out of the country. You are getting it from the treasury and giving it to people who are just ferrying it out. So there is a hemorrhage in our economy, to the extent that the common person of Uganda will only end at paying the taxes, and they don't really see the taxes translating back into empowering them and equipping them. Otherwise, if it were possible for us to see that the common man is benefiting from this budget, we have contractors in Uganda.
Good engineers.
Very good engineers. I really don't know what our policy is as a country, that we have universities putting a lot of engineers onto the job market, and we are not enabling them to be active.
And you've preempted me to have a conversation on, and we'll have that conversation later, but on oil, there was a Dubai entity that got the contract for service delivery, food, catering, all that. And I'm imagining, really, Ugandans, don't we have people within the market? That is what
the people of Hoima were crying for. We are having the oil fields. We thought we would accommodate people. We thought we would be at least supplying food to those who are working into the oil fields. What do they see? Contracts given to people in South Africa. Even the chicken they eat there, including maybe even the legs of the chicken, shipped all the way from South Africa to Kaisotonya. So the locals are asking, not even the eggs that I have here with me.
Exactly.
Can let me have a feel of the oil that we have in our area. So as a country, our priorities are different from our wishes. And yet I would imagine that if we are looking at a budget that should be people-centered, then we should do all it takes to ensure money is into the people's pockets. I got shocked when I asked one of the ministers, Marion talked about it, that we put money into some activities, but we are not so quick to see whether we are yielding any results from it. I asked him, have you understood that the money you give to these people in the villages, some of them use the money for different issues
than
he said,
the desired thing.
As long as the money is within the population, if the person gets the money, takes it for dowry, or gets it to a girlfriend, it is still okay, because after all, the money is moving within the economy. But are you interested in seeing this Ugandan progress and being built up so that we go towards a middle income economy that we thought we should have reached by 2020, because that was the promise. Come 2020, Uganda will be a middle income
country.
Now we are in 2022, we have shifted that to 2040. Now, as we shift that, it means our priorities really
are changing,
and we have not been able to put things where they matter most. Talking about debts, our debt burden, every year it keeps increasing. Every year it keeps increasing. I got the privilege of being in Parliament by 2008. So when you look at the progress of the debt refinancing from 2008 to 2021, our debt burden is at 16 trillion. So out of the 44 trillion that you are talking about, we have servicing of debt up to around 16 trillion.
And the conversation was most of the money
it's around
is going
trillion.
To go to debt refinancing.
Yes, we are going to debt refinancing. So even when Ugandans are excited that they have a budget which is increasing now to 44 trillion, but they should know that around 15 trillion of it is supposed to go for debt. As a country, we have not known how to follow up the loans that we borrow. Yes, we borrow loans, and by the time we go to borrow, we have given very sweet paperwork. We have assured the Ugandans that the money we are going to borrow is going to increase household incomes, it's going to pay the civil servants, it's going to work on, you remember the Rubowa Hospital?
I remember Rubowa Hospital.
We borrowed colossal sums of money that we are going to do what?
Still on foundation, no left.
My dear, they can't even allow anyone to go there, including the Minister of Health. I still remember the Honorable Sarah Upendi when she was still in health. She wanted to go and see the level at which the construction was. They chased her. I was a member of the budget committee. They chased us. Members of the health committee were chased. So I really don't know. After we have appropriated the money, we have given it to a sector. What next?
Marion.
So the people who are supposed to receive this money, the money I would have loved to see it getting into the youth livelihood program, the women empowerment program. Then we would see money getting to the most critical areas, like Marion said, ensuring that we look at our budget now in a crisis kind of situation. We handled COVID. Have we increased the sector of health? We know that many people have lost jobs. What are we doing to ensure that to cushion those who lost their jobs? But when you look at the people who are defaulting to give us money, which would have been our locally generated revenue, Ministry of Finance is one of those that are not paying their debts to Uganda Revenue Authority. Office of, yes, our money. State House is also among the culprits that have debts. So they are quick to pick the money to use for their own use, but they are slow to pay their taxes, the taxes which all Ugandans must enjoy. So it is really not a people-centered budget, though they think it is going to help reduce on the joblessness by improving the household incomes. And the National Development Plan talks about transforming now our society using technology and innovations, but I'm not seeing much money going into innovation development.
Research and development.
Research and development, I'm not seeing much money going into that aspect. So as we are still at the time of discussing this budget, I would really implore our members of Parliament to continue asking some of these questions. How are we going to cushion the economy in a situation where our debt burden is high? How are we going to reduce on borrowings so that we work within our means?
And let me pick Marion's brain on that. In working within our means, when I looked at that budget, the first thing that came to my mind is the pandemic should have taught us to cut back. There are some things we do not necessarily need. And as much as debt refinancing is very important, especially to make sure we are not in a cycle of debt, we have money. I think a few weeks back, a meeting sat at Parliament, and they were, questioning loans that they needed to take back because the money wasn't even used.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining, how did we borrow that and we didn't even use it? But then on that aspect, on living within our means, I now start to worry for service sectors like the education sector and the health sector, because you have doctors on one end saying, if you do not give us our money, we are sitting. And we know our value because we've seen it in 2 years that you will need us to survive. So I'm imagining, how do we then begin to live within our means, but then also not cripple the important parts of our community, the important sectors of our economy?
How do we live within our means but not cripple the important sections of our community or sectors of our community? I think it comes with first having your priorities. I think the basics of every person who makes a budget, whether it's at home or even at the national level, priorities first.
Yeah.
That if you want to live within your means, that means that your economy has to be functioning at such a level that it can produce the revenue that is needed to at least keep you afloat. Now, you are in a country whereby even that revenue, collecting those taxes, is very hard because most of the people are in the informal sector.
And even the government is defaulting.
So you need to be very deliberate about, first of all, how do I, if most of my people are in agriculture, how do I make sure that agriculture becomes profitable enough for people to be able, for me to be able to raise the tax base that I need to get that revenue. If people are in the formal sector, how do I support the trader in Chikuvu to be able to have a business that I can actually put on the books and tax? The vendors that we see on the streets, how can I bring them into a business that I can actually see that, okay, this one is on block this and this, so I will come and value his commodities and be able to tax him. But that cannot happen if people are not able to have profitable businesses, that someone is living from hand to mouth, that even the little that they have, they get it through very dubious means. Yeah, you're hustling. So how are you going to tax someone who lives on less than $1 a day? It becomes very problematic. So if you want to live within your means, then you need to make priorities. You need to prioritize things like agriculture, that also the informal sector. You need to prioritize industrialization so that you can have an economy that provides jobs. People get off the streets and are working in your factories. You're manufacturing things that you can even export to other countries. And
maybe in that, because we have factories now, that was our agenda for industrialization.
But who is working in them?
Who is working, and how much are they being paid?
Exactly. You have factories that are not necessarily Ugandan owned.
Exactly.
They are
investors.
They have Chinese all over the place, and these Chinese are going to employ fellow Chinese. I think you're going to most of the managers are Chinese, the secretaries are Chinese. Perhaps the person who is Ugandan is the one working on the machines and doing the queer jobs around. And we see the same even. And Honorable talked about the roads. Just look at the roads and you will see what parts of
Turkey,
what are we working on exactly. So you need to find, how do I make my economy profitable? And also, what are the other sectors that support this economy? Sectors like education. So if I want to industrialize, I cannot industrialize without investing in education, because where will the innovation come from? And especially when I'm from a pandemic, when I have lost a generation of young people to teenage pregnancies, to, let me say, inability to pay their school fees. Are we looking at even the publicly sponsored institutions of learning are increasing fees? I mean, if you look at the Buddhas of this world and the Kiiza, you would think that they would be the first people to go by what government has said and not increase what? School fees. So by all means that you don't just give directives and not see them through. When we're talking about teenage pregnancies, if you have said that these schools should allow, have you gone down to look at how many are actually allowing? But also, are they equipped enough? Because I know that most of these schools can actually handle with the school fees that we pay. They can actually handle the teenage mothers. But have you gone down to see that they have made those accommodations?
There's
to
an
make sure
implementation in place to help cushion the mothers.
When we go to health is very central. Are you making sure that your population is well enough to actually, because health is wealth. If your population is not well, it cannot innovate, it cannot go to work, it cannot produce the economy that you need to be profitable. So why is it that most of your ministers are dying in Nairobi when you have hospitals here?
You had to bring it.
Yeah, we have to be serious.
There is one that was chartered to Seattle in the Uganda airline.
But look at the cost that they are using. If you could, those 20 millions plus, if they could come and foot a bill here at Mulago, look at, maybe that money would be used to buy more equipment. And
someone said they need to go to Chirudu and also have
put money in Chirudu instead of going to all these other places. But we cannot be in a country where that doctors have no gloves, doctors are not paid, doctors have no equipment, there are no machines. You're going to India, you're going to Nairobi. But at the end of the day, we have seen through this pandemic that if you don't revamp your health sector, there's a possibility that other countries can also shut their doors to you.
Yes.
We were stuck in this country and no one could get out. Yes. That if you wanted, and that's how many ministers and prominent people died. Because they weren't able to go to the Nairobis of this world because our airports were closed. It's only you had to go through stringent measures in order to get permission to go. And that's how people died. It should be a wake-up call to people that really, if I do not invest in health, there might be another pandemic, or this pandemic might actually get worse and we get into another lockdown. And I won't have where to go to get proper treatment.
And I think that is my dilemma. Because I'm not bringing in this, Honorable. It is very easy for us to miss it because it almost feels like the doctors are begging.
Yeah. They are.
The doctors are begging. But the reality should be that service delivery should be at the top of our agenda, at the top of our conversations.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even be something we talk about. It should be that it is happening. I pay the taxes, make my taxes work for me. But also it preempts me to the conversation Marion had begun. And this is where I want to bring you on the street vendors and the politics around, their survival. I mean, we know for a fact there was no one that wasn't crushed. But I think people who live hand to mouth felt the pandemic more than anyone else. Or if anything, they didn't survive. Some didn't survive, the heat of the pandemic.
Suicide.
But how do we, and it's a conversation the councillors have been having. It's been very sticky. How do we plan for the street vendors? Make sure we have a smart city that we want without, putting them in a position where they can't empower themselves with work. How do we reinforce their human rights to access to food, to medical care, to employment, to realizing their own freedoms without, having the military rotate around them and making it hard for them to even thrive within Uganda?
When a country decides to use the military for every small problem, that even to a vendor, a street vendor, you will have to employ full gear of the military. It is really a sad situation. A situation that has gone up, and many times when I say that our situation has gone out of control, people think I'm an alarmist. But you will see by just the mere look of things that we want to reduce our police to just maybe, will I say,
spectators.
Not spectators, but I think we just want to reduce them to these common getmen, to these common askaris, to these people of these ones from the security companies,
Saracen.
the likes of Saracen and whatever. Because really, when you are chasing a street vendor without an option, what do you want this person to do? This is the only way this person is surviving. For me, I would look at the situation of possibly empowering the street vendor, register them. And there is a law, by the way, that empowers the leadership at those levels to tax these street vendors if it is for purposes of tax collection. And you know, because they have not formalized it, the taxation is some bit of corruption now. Some people who are involved into taxing the street vendors, I think now they do it on a one-to-one, to the extent that the city council is not in position to monitor the revenue that is coming from the vendors. But they have a law enabling legislation that is supposed to give them the mandate to tax the vendors. And if you are a country that plans for all citizens alike, then they should have the gazetted areas where they say, look, for you, the vendors, you can vend from A, B, C, D. The only place these people can get money from the people is through the traffic jam that has become an issue. Why do they go to the streets? Because that's where people are. People fear to go into the markets to buy because of the jams that are created on our roads. So they have decided to buy things as they go home from the people who are hawking on the roads. Now you are telling them to go to the markets, which will make it hard for the buyers to reach where they are. People are not going to the markets because the situation in the markets is not even good.
Even the accessibility.
You go there, you will not find where to park your car. You park your car, you are not even sure of its safety. You are not sure whether by the time you finish the shopping, you will find all the parts on your car intact.
Still there.
The only option is to buy as you go. So these vendors you are forcing into a confined place, you are actually taking them away from the people who buy. So me, instead of seeing my government employing all the security to harass and violate the rights of these vulnerable citizens, I would rather see them now talking about empowering them with options, give them more skills that will get them from the roads. They are also not happy on the roads. Don't think they are living a dignified life by hawking on the streets. They would have been safer to sell maybe in real organized environments that are safe and secure for all users.
And I saw something, maybe to come in there. I saw an illustration of a person that created, in imagining a smart city, that you can have actually removable stalls. Like they create them in such a way that at the end of the day, they can become bus park areas. That in the day, I will do my business. At the end of the day, I'll pull it up and it will become and it was just an illustration in technology of what you can imagine. And I was imagining, do we think beyond, let's chase them, but rather within where they are working, let's make it in such a way that they can still work, but make it part of our smart city.
But for me, I also want to ask, that's the councillors that we vote, are they having this conversation?
Yes, they are.
I think the councillors are equally having a conversation, but the conversations, they also have limitations. To the extent that when they talk, they will talk, but at the end of it all, there is someone else who is supposed to make the decisions. So this Mr. Decision Maker, I'm not taking it away from the councillors because I know that they are also supposed to look at how do we make these vulnerable people who are being chased right, left, and center comfortable for them to be able to run their families, for them to be able to contribute positively to the economy without hassle, without any challenges. I know there will always be challenges. Even in our homes, we have these challenges. But can we look at a way of minimizing the challenges as we make life a little bit meaningful for even this street vendor. I know they also want to have environments that will keep them in a dignified manner, where you will wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to sell. And maybe you can even be able to tell your children, I'm selling at plot this, around this place. They can come and see you. Not carrying a basket of banana and njugu from morning to evening. You are just moving Kampala Road, Ente Ginger Road, Kampala Road, and Tebe Road. They get tired. So really, if there was anybody thinking about a smart city, create avenues that make the city smart, while bearing in mind that you have people of low incomes who must equally survive. They are hustling for life. They are hustling because their government has not considered them. Make them feel acceptable in their society. Make them feel part of the society. Even these budgets that we are doing, what does the street vendor see in it for herself or for himself? Let the street vendor know that the budget which has been read this year is providing for me as well. And therefore I can go home and tell my children, come this financial year, you will be able to get your fees in time. Because I know that my government has provided A, B, C, D, has planned for even me, the lowest person. But the budget that we have is actually for only those who can be able to interpret it, read it, and someone will tell you, you know, we are now planning for rule of law, we are planning for security, we are planning for... And this ordinary person will not see the rule of law. When people are being, flogged on the streets, you are beating them up, there is no freedom of communication, no freedom of expression, no freedom of participation in political decisions. So really, which type of rule of law are you pushing? Because, you know, actions speak louder than words. You are talking about rule of law. Rule of law will come with the tenets of good governance. Where there is everything is transparent. Where there is freedom of speech. Where there is equal access to resources and facilities. Where citizens feel safe and secure in their environment. But a rule of law where you are going to empower the military to flog people. Is that really the rule of law that we are budgeting for as a country? So many times really the Ugandans don't seem to see sense in the budgets that we are doing. But I really still would like to implore Ugandans, be part of the budget process. Be part of it through your leaders.
Ask the hard questions.
Ask the hard questions to your LCs. Let them tell you when was the last meeting of the LC1 or the cell held to talk about the priorities of your local areas. When was the last meeting held for you to be consulted on what you think should be involved, should be put in the development plan of your village? Because the Local Governments Act Cap 243 empowers the local governments to have that decentralized model of involving everyone in the budget process. Consult them. By the time the national budget is made, by the time the development plan of the nation is made, the districts are supposed to have made their development plans. And the district's development plans emanate from the LOC1 development plans, LC3 development plans, to the LC5 development plans. So in around September there, by the time the budget process begins, the districts have input the national development plan. You know, this national development plan is a rolling one. They do a 5-year development plan. So the issues are picked. Every year you say we are going to handle this, we are going to handle this. Maybe if there are issues that you never dealt with, then you carry them forward and say, let's see if we can get money and put into these issues. So citizens, you are the ones paying taxes. You are the ones paying taxes. Follow your money. You know, when the graduated tax was discontinued, citizens thought they are no longer paying taxes. Every single thing that you buy in the market has a tax on it. Whether it is, you know, even these days you are buying dodo in the market, they will tell you, emiwendo jayongedde, because the fuel prices are so high. We use a lot of money now to go and do shopping. Everything has gone up because of the fuel prices going up.
Yeah, true.
And so all the things that you buy, my dear citizens, there is a tax. Be it soap, be it salt, be it a matchbox, be it what, be it sugar, there is a tax that you are paying. And these taxes are supposed to make your lives better.
Exactly.
You are only contributing to a central pool so that someone brings all the monies together from the different citizens and plan for the whole community. So it's your duty to ask your leaders, the chairman LOC1 with his executive, the chairman LOC3 with his executive, the chairman LOC5 with his executive, the president with his cabinet, and say, where is the money that I pay in terms of taxes? What has it done for me? Ask. And when these projects come to your villages, go down and monitor and see whether the correct things are being done. The only problem, tukomao.
Marion, let me just, because she spoke something on it and I want to dive us into it. The military say they are going to be, the part of the reason they need that much money is because they're going to invest in rule of law. And then for the past 1 month, we've been awash with torture issues within the country. And at the height of it is we have, you know, because it has been happening. The problem with us is we pick it up when it is overwhelming for us, but because it has been happening. So you have SFC somewhere. It's a state security operative that has flogged human beings into beyond recognition.
You know, maybe before you even finish it, I saw this young man from Kasese, Masereka.
Yes, Masereka.
The man has been beaten to a point where the body is even rotting.
Yes.
Kakweza. A person like Kakweza, a person like Masereka, how do you tell him that the budget must increase because you are handling rule of law?
Which rule of law?
Is it rule by law or rule of law? Those two issues must be understood. So, a family of Mr. Masereka in Kasese.
What do you tell them?
What do you tell them? That the budget has increased because we want to equip the SFC. You tell Kakweza that we are increasing the budget because we must equip the SFC. Really?
And so, Marion, because you're in these spaces and you're an activist as well, what does it speak to our budgeting and to our priorities, especially for the what do you tell Kakweza? That the rule of law that the military is asking for may include your torture.
Kakweza tewali mugamba, I think, as a government. But for me, one thing I want to point out, and I want to make this, because I feel sometimes we narrow down on a particular individual and forget all the rest. I want us not to forget that even as we talk about Kakweza and Masereka, they are people who and we saw, I think we saw one of the victims that was arrested, a Muslim man, who told his story on NTV of how he was one of the detainees and they were accusing him of terrorism. Of killing Kawesi. That there are so many people behind bars who I would call them, for the lack of a better word, political prisoners in a way, that circumstances have put them there. When we talk about the 2021 elections, 25 political prisoners are still behind bars. That is just the number that we know. There are others perhaps that we don't know.
True.
You get. They are people who were killed, who are accused of killing the Muslim clerics. They've never been brought before trial. There were people who were accused of killing Kawesi and prominent people. They've never been brought before trial. There are people that the SFC keeps on picking up day and night. There's also a vendor, 15-year-old, that I saw that they picked up And the story in the newspapers was like he turned to vending because he didn't want to steal. That was the alternative. I
And
don't know if he will
victim.
ever be brought to trial. There are those small, you know, he's a hawker, then he's arrested. He's a boda man, then he's arrested. I think that the most problematic thing that I feel is that the silence of the judiciary in all these things.
Yes.
You see, because okay, and it's not to excuse the police or the military or the thing. They equally have their hell to pay or accountability they should be giving. But you see, when we're working with separation of powers and the three arms of government, the judiciary is supposed to be the moral fabric in all this, in the three, the one that makes sure that these two are kept in check, and that there's never one time that they come together to at least the level of oppression should have a limit.
Doesn't that speak to something? That
Yes,
perhaps
that's what
our
I'm saying.
judiciary is sold
is
out?
in bed. Yeah, it's the judiciary is in bed with the state. I think we need to also, maybe as the different law schools and the lawyers, take a touch, because even of late, even Uganda Law Society is so quiet. Their silence is so. I saw one of my lecturers poke at them, and their response was that, oh, we put out a statement, but we need more than a statement from you. You cannot see I mean, because it is judiciary trials, bringing people before court. Your court orders are most of the time ignored. Your courts are under siege. There is nothing that you can do. You are immobile. And people, and it's on judicial notice that even people who are supposed to be under your custody are being tortured. Like, there's no respect for you. If I was the Chief Justice, I would feel very disrespected as a person to preside over a judiciary that is completely, how can I say, it is completely, how do I say, something that is just, it's just stepped on, and it's there's nothing, there is no judiciary to speak of. So I think I would like to take it to that dimension, that these people who are supposed to demand, you're always talking about backlogs, but these are people's lives that you should be, yes, you should be able to sit down and say, okay, what is the priority? That this 15-year-old that has been picked up by the street is going to stay behind bars just because you can't put your act together. Is it the judges? Put your house in order, you know, have the decency, because 20 years from now, we are going to look back at your legacy and we know that you presided over a brutal regime. You are complacent, that you were silent.
Someone
you were
said
in
that,
bed.
the chief judge is now, he has been cornered to just creating events where he praises himself
and what he has done. And it's very problematic as a people. When we go to the security, I don't think we should look forward to anything.
So the money they are going to just eat. There is no rule of law.
They are going to use the money, but they are going to use the money to buy more tear gas vehicles. They are going to spend your money, and they will spend it very well. Buy more, let me say, bullets, guns. Buy more helicopters to help them. They are going to equip themselves.
Enter the Congo.
Yes, enter the Congo, and they are equipping themselves to continue and sustain their military regime. I do not think it's about to get any better. I think we're going to see more tortured victims. But the thing is, I think for us as activists, is the buffer. How do we get, let me say, provoke the judiciary into at least the bare minimum, making sure that these people are brought to trial? You know, the basics. How do we make sure that, you know, that we can provoke them to create a kind of cushion, that it doesn't become so bad? And if the worst comes to the worst, how do we as activists find more creative ways to express ourselves and, you know, and find more? I usually pick from the civil rights movement, very inspired, equally under brutalized regime, only that for them a section of their population was in bed with the brutality of the regime. And it was always the simple things, their ability to innovate, that, okay, if I want to desegregate this state, how do I start? I start by going into a whites-only restaurant and just sit there.
I drink on their fountain.
Yes, and just sit there. It's a very innocent act. Very innocent act.
Yeah.
That if someone came and slapped you for sitting in a restaurant, they would look very funny. Yes, to
for
people.
drinking on their fountain.
So perhaps we should look at those simple things.
Non-violent.
Yes, non-violent, simple things that we can do as activists. It's very simple that even if someone would slap you, they would look very ridiculous. Because also we are playing into their narrative. It has also become, and not that insulting and is bad. What they did to Kakwenza did not fit. The crime did not fit the punishment.
And was there a crime?
And there wasn't a crime to start with. Was there a crime?
That's a question.
There wasn't a crime to even start with. And it's actually, there is no moral authority for them to say anything, because Museveni is always abusing people. But what I'm trying to say is that, he's always abusing people. So if we were to whip, the first person who would whip would be him, calling people pigs and all that. But perhaps as activists also, we need to think outside of the box. We're in a dictatorship, we're in a brutal regime. How are we going to re-innovate ourselves also to fit to the level at which the state continuously is reinventing its brutality and, its ways of doing things? But also, we need to find, I think, we need to find a common table. I think Uganda, for us, we have failed as a country, and these are actors across the space, whether I would say that there may be activist judges in the judiciary, or there are activists in civil society, or there are political activists in the different political spheres. I think Besigye was onto something when he was like, let us come together and sit. Because we can't keep on organizing separately and think that we're going to create any impact. We need, by all means, to have a round table where we come as actors across the country and say that, okay, this is our reality. Because most of Museveni's tactics is using divide and rule. He has used it for so many years, and it has kept him, actually, it's his biggest weak point.
But even the colonialists used divide and rule.
Exactly. So the only way, I think, for us, and don't look at the budget, don't look at anything, is that those who are seeking change, put aside your egos, tutulewa and sit on a round table, together. And then let us see, okay, this is it. You are good at this skill set, I'm good at this skill set. Can we see how we can come together and reorganize? These conversations, unfortunately, only happen when the next election. So this conversation, I will start hearing it in 2025.
Marion, Honorable Winnie will tell you that it is a values issue for them in ANT. So if the values are changing and yet you look at we want us to sit, can we come back together and have the same values and then have that conversation happen? But to pick your brain on that, Honorable Winnie, especially on what then can we do in a regime that has now fronted violence as an option or as a language. How are we going, and let me say it from this perspective, because we've come from a place where we had the public order management. I mean, we used to protest.
Yeah.
If you remember, there was a time we used to protest. And so we left the protest because there was a law created to prohibit that.
Yeah.
So you can no longer converge together to, organize, to push, to ask, to hold government accountable. And so we went into the digital spaces. And we realized that at the point of a tweet, at the point of a Facebook post, I can shake people in two corners. But then now we have torture happening at just the whim of a person because they become an avenger. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with the dynamic of a shrinking space for organizing, for freedom of speech, for freedom of expression?
All is not lost.
Yeah.
We still have articles in the Constitution that still give us the leverage to demonstrate. You can even use Article 3 of the Constitution, which tells you even to demonstrate against the Constitution itself. If you think there is something in the Constitution that you are not comfortable about, you can equally demonstrate. I still believe that possibly the public is not being engaged enough.
Okay.
Our population is still thinking the space for airing out the concerns of Ugandans is for a specific group of individuals. So you will have the Kakwenzas, the Marions, the Winnies of this world then being targeted.
True.
So if all our Ugandans can know that they are duty bound to ask for their rights and ensure that their rights are protected, there are some rights which we don't even need to begin begging for.
True.
If all of us can know what our civic rights and obligations are, then our tormentors will stop tormenting us. When we are talking about now the compliances of the judiciary, I'm just looking at the Ugandans who were arrested after attacking the palace in Kasese in 2016. Up to now, they are still in jail. They have never accessed any justice.
Some die.
Some have died there unheard. They have never seen anything called justice. And so you keep asking, is the country's program really for the good of the people or not? Because our laws, the tenet of our law is that you are presumed innocent until you're proven guilty. Now, if someone you arrest for the last 5 years has never been heard, so the assumption of innocence is not there. It's like you have condemned them before they are even heard. And before those ones went there are others who went before them who have equally never been heard.
True.
So really, we need to raise up to the occasion as Ugandans and say enough is enough. We need to begin speaking to the powers that be and say, hey, look here, I think this is not right, this is not right, and we need to all be watchdogs of whatever is happening in our country.
But
the moment we keep thinking that it's individuals who should now hold the banner, we are putting them at the forefront of being brutalized. But there are also those who are benefiting from the confusion. Those who benefit from the confusion, those who are benefiting from the corruption, those who are benefiting from the brutality, cannot allow it to end. It's just like the times of slave trade. Those who were benefiting from slave trade did not want it to end, and yet it was their brothers and sisters that they were selling off to the traders. So there are even those who are collaborating in these acts. And for them, they want actually the budget to increase because as the dictator becomes more worried and more worried, every penny matters to him because he must keep himself in power. He must use all avenues to ensure that he creates fear amongst the population to the extent that even the groupings that you are talking about, Marion, of saying, let's come together and begin talking. You are three, but the two of you are not in the same line. It is only possibly one that is
thinking like every
in the right direction. So you will never know when we are 3 or 4. That
one of us is from the other
that's
end.
why to us in the alliance we say let's first build the moral fabric of our society so that everybody knows that if I'm going for a job, it is specifically that one. I will not be diverted and I will not look back.
But then I will ask.
Let me first put a stop because the team is telling me we are running out of time. So in 1 minute, what your concluding remarks are, especially in regard to our budget.
Yes. So I will join my voice to honorables and say that we need to be having these conversations, that we need to involve people in caring about the budget. I think that's the most thing that whenever this conversation, I think if the numbers are too complicated for people to understand, perhaps we need to break it down to them. But by all means, we need to make sure that people care. Because once people start caring, that is when maybe there is even hope of any action from them,
Yeah.
or even them being involved in the process.
Yeah.
Maybe as civil society, we need to go out to the communities and say, this is what the budget means to you in a layman's terms, or translate it into Luganda or Lukonjo, wherever you're going.
I think ideally then the question would be that people need to know that the budget is your budget. That is your money. And the conversation on the budget will never end, because it's pertinent that we understand how our money is being spent. Today we've had this conversation, but I want this conversation to continue in your spaces, in your small, go to your chairman. Like Honorable Winnie said, go to your chairman and ask him, what did we do to contribute? Thank you for being part of this conversation. We will never end. Our conversation will continue. We didn't even enter into the oil conversation at all. But I want to have you back so we can continue these conversations. Most importantly, to educate people. And also thank you for joining us today. I've been your host. My name is Tricia, Gloria, Nabaye. Thank you from us here at Civic Space. Bye.